And good morning again.
Good morning.
I kind of changed my title out there is Eliminate Fear, Practice Gratitude, but I changed that a little bit, so just kind of bear with me. You know, you ask for these titles way in advance. So sometimes they get changed in the process. So I will just subtitle it then, In All Things Give Thanks. And I'm taking my information from Eric Butterworth's book, Spiritual Economics, which is my older source, and then a newer source is Pray Up Your Life by Charlene E. Manuel. It's 50 powerful prayer practices to help you create the life you desire. Charlene Manuel was one of my instructors when I was in ministerial school. And I'm also very proud to say that she was the keynote speaker at Unity Village for World Day of Prayer this year. So that was very special. My scriptures are 1 Thessalonians 5:8 and Philippians 4:8 through 9. And we'll explain these as we go along. And the 1 Thessalonians, that is where we find the in all things give thanks. Now, this month of November, we know that we have the 12 powers, and each month is dedicated to one of our 12 divine powers. And this month, we have elimination, or some people say renunciation, and some people say release. But what that means is that getting rid of the gunk, okay, is what I like to call it. Just get rid of that which does not serve, and this whole month is devoted to that. The disciple's name is Thaddeus, but actually his first name was Judas, but they always say Thaddeus, which was his surname, because of the association with the Judas Iscariot. Okay, some people believe that he was the brother and not the son of James, son of Alphaeus, who was representative of our power of order, which is the power for September. And the color is brown. And we know what things are brown, usually things that are rotted and no good and spoiled. So we have that as the color. So it's twofold, according to Reverend Jack Bomar. This aspect is twofold. Number one is to eliminate the clutter of error, and this includes part of my title, fear. And if you've heard the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real, that's one of them. And there's some others too, but we'll use that one for today's purpose. And also, elimination helps us to expand the good in our lives. So now to tie this all together, or to try to tie it together, in addition to this, the power of elimination and so forth, November brings us two significant holidays or observances. One we just had last week, which was Veterans Day, and then Thanksgiving, which will be later on this month. So Thanksgiving is the day that we pause to give thanks for the things that we have. And Veterans Day is the day when we pause to give thanks for the people who fight for the things that we have, and fight to preserve those things. So now, what about the other 11 months? Let me get my graphic here real quick. Okay, this is a picture. I was going to have it blown up, but because of copyright laws, no copy store will touch it. So what it has two lines. One is for complaints, and one is for gratitude. You can't see this?
Wow.
You see it, right? So where are all the people standing? In the complaints line. And sometimes I have to say I find myself there too. But anyway, and then the gratitude, you don't have anyone standing there. Well, I would like to think that we would have some people in the gratitude line sometimes. So what about this other 11 months? Do we stand in the complaint line, or do we stand in the gratitude line? Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We can practice gratitude, and not only can we practice gratitude in November, we can practice gratitude daily. And where the fear part comes in, we know that we can't hold two types of thoughts in our minds at the same time. You can't have fear and be thankful at the same time. So we want to focus on that which is positive. And we find that gratitude can be the antidote to many of our ills, aside from it being one for fear. So Eric Butterworth in the book Spiritual Economics, in chapter 5, and I just finished, I did a 4-week session on spiritual economics. So that's sticking in my mind quite a bit now because of that. And in chapter 5, he says, in all things give thanks. In all things give thanks. In other words, despite problems, or we like to refer to those as challenges, or even because of them, the need is to get recentered in the awareness of the ever-presence of substance. And we know substance means to stand under, and it's everything that all things out here are made of substance. There's enough substance to go around. Marie doesn't get more than I do. We all have access to this substance. So we need to get recentered in the awareness of the ever-presence of substance. And we mold substance through our thinking. You know, thoughts held in mind. I give thanks not for these things, but from the awareness that there is always an all-sufficiency, even within the insufficiency. So even if we feel that there is lack, we still have access to substance. All of us do. And we don't need to be jealous of anybody because we can have the same thing someone else can. The key is our thinking. That's the main key. So now Paul gives some advice that's been puzzling to many people. He said, in effect, in all things give thanks. All things? Everything? Is it practical or even possible? Can you be grateful for inflation that constantly steals the value of your money? Can you give thanks for spiraling costs, for exorbitant interest rates, for personal financial crisis? And how can you give thanks for lack and for unemployment? You don't. According to the law of consciousness, these things manifest in our life because in some subtle subconscious way, we are frustrated with divine flow. So it ain't God's fault, you know? And sometimes it's easy to blame things on something outside of you, okay? But there is something that you can do. You can know that you have access to this substance and that you can use this substance to mold the kind of life that you want through your thinking. So let's look again at that puzzling statement. Now notice that he doesn't say, for all things give thanks. He says, in all things give thanks. So in other words, despite the problems of lack or even because of them, the need is to get ourselves again recentered in the awareness of the ever-present substance. One of the most effective ways to do this is through thanksgiving. He is stressing the importance of the grateful heart, not simply an expression of gratitude for things, but a heart that is grateful, full of all greatness. The results of a practice of gratitude have been well established. And people have done scientific studies on it, believe it or not. And we have, you've had her here, a speaker, Lisa Ryan. Her business is going around to companies and teaching the employees and the management how to be thankful towards their employees. Because it has been found that when a person in charge or people in charge express gratitude, then the employees do better, they work harder, are more productive, and that affects the good old bottom line. Yeah. So she does that, and she has quite a thriving business doing that. So people who practice gratitude, there are a number of things that come with that. They exercise more. They drink less alcohol. Some people might not want to hear that. People who practice gratitude are friendly and nice to be around. They have healthier relationships, are more optimistic, and they live longer. People who take the time to notice and appreciate the good things that come their way through grace, luck, or the goodness of others are happier and more peaceful. So what does that have to do with eliminating fear? Well, to borrow from the Course in Miracles, everything is either an expression of love or an expression of fear. Just those two things. You're either coming from a stance of fear or you're coming from a stance of love. We cannot be loving and fearful at the same time. I repeat that. Because the mind cannot hold a positive thought and a negative thought at the same time. So if you're worrying, you're not praying. And if you're praying, you're not worrying. So now Reverend Charlene E. Manuel is also featured in the October-November Daily Word. And they have an excerpt there from her book, Pray Up Your Life. And then she says, and I quote, "Some folks seem to be naturally grateful in all circumstances. I was in awe of the attitude of a young man I met years ago who at the age of 25 had been in a car accident that left him paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. He always had a smile on his face. He was polite to others. He was grateful for whoever picked him up for church and saw that he was returned home. He loved to sing and always had something funny to say. He was truly a unique example of how being grateful, how good it is to be grateful in all circumstances." And there's also a Unity minister, Reverend Richard Mirage in Phoenix, Arizona. He was in a car accident and he lost both his legs. And when he does his sermons, he's standing there, he has the canes, and he's standing there. So can you imagine the strength it must take to keep yourself up? You know, he has the prosthetic legs and he has the canes with him. So can you imagine what strength it takes? But he too, you'd never meet a more beautiful person than Reverend Mirage. I had the pleasure of meeting him at one point. So for some of us, and I would venture to say most of us, myself included, an attitude of gratitude has to be cultivated and nurtured. And there are several ways of doing this. Number one is to write a letter of appreciation to someone who may have helped you. Make a gratitude visit. Go in person to express gratitude. Back in 1980, I was having a very hard time in my life. And it was one of those periods, where you have broken wings. And quite frankly, that's what I had. And this involved a move from one side of town to the other side of town. I went back east, home. And I had decided, I had been taking yoga on the west side. And before I moved, I decided, well, I'll go to one more class. I'll go to one more class and then, that'll be that because I'm moving. Well, at this particular class that I went to, the regular teacher was not there, and I didn't know she wasn't going to be there. And in her place was the woman who would become my lifelong yoga teacher. And at this point, she is reaching the end of her journey. So her son asked me if I would be her spiritual care advisor, which I do so with great pleasure, and it's an honor to do that. So that's my gratitude to her. And then we figured it out the other day. We had been friends for 35 years. And she was not only my teacher, but she was a friend. And I think my mother used to get a little jealous of her. Because she'd say, who is this woman that you're always going off with? We had several adventures. She got called down to the radio station, and she was in the middle of teaching a class. And she took me with her to the radio station. So that was the one and only time I've ever been on the radio. And she used to teach a class called mental yoga, which they call it a lot of other stuff now, and they charge big bucks for it. But she had a weekend called mental yoga. And I was the only student in the class, Saturday and Sunday. So what an honor and a pleasure that was. So anything that I can do to return that and to show my gratitude for her, I do it. I was over there yesterday, and she's not doing too well. She's not the person that I know, but she knows me, you know. So I went to her bedside yesterday, and I was stroking her hair, and she opened up her eyes, and she said, "Karen." So she's there. She's in there. And pretty soon, I expect she'll be going to the other side, but that's okay. We'll make peace with it. So the other thing we can do is make a gratitude list. Set a goal of listing 100 things you have to be grateful for. Then keep adding to the list until you reach that number. Well, a good way to get the first 26 is A, B, C, D through Z. And write down one thing for every letter. And I think Lisa does this with people. We write down one thing for every letter. So that's 26 right there. And then you can just write them down as you think of them until you get to others. Now, some days may be harder than others. You might have to look under a rock. I've had those kind of days. But if you look hard enough, you'll see that during that day, there was something to be grateful for. Take a gratitude walk. And this is similar to the gratitude list. You have a set period of time during your walk to focus on deepening gratitude. Many find the movement and variety of a walk help the brain and heart to work better. And I was walking for a while, kind of falling off of that. But during the earlier months when it was really nice, I would go out and I would walk every day. And what I found, especially after rain, is just how clean the air is and the atmosphere is. And I look at the trees and I would look at the homes around me, and I had never really, you know, you trying to get home, you don't look and see what other people have, you know, you don't care. But when you're out walking, you say, oh, that's a pretty house or pretty lawn, or, you know, I like the way they did that, the design of that, and so on. So this gives you a chance to notice those things. Gives you a chance to notice the trees, the birds singing. If you ever go to Unity Village, the birds sing really loud out there. So you'll be able to hear the birds. And one of the things that I do when I go there is I walk the labyrinth, and then walking the labyrinth, you get a feeling for some of these things too. Okay, we said the A to Z on a sheet of paper and quickly list the things that you're grateful for. And it's a fun exercise. But the granddaddy of them all is the gratitude journal. This was an idea that was made popular by Sarah Van Brethnock, I believe. She used to be on Oprah quite a bit. I haven't seen her lately. But she came up with this idea of gratitude journal, and I'm sure other people had thought of it. What you do is you keep a notebook, and this can be fancy. You know, I've seen some online that are really fancy and really expensive, you know. But it doesn't take all that. You can take a notebook and write it down. I have, you know, at the end of the year, many times you get these daytimers, they call them. I do mine in that. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sometimes it's more than 5. And sometimes I had to struggle to come up with 3, just to be honest with you. You know, but that's just how life is. So what you do is you write down 3 to 5 things for which you are grateful, and you keep a record of it. And I have several of those little notebooks, because I don't keep a bound thing, but I do keep that little day timer, and you can just quickly write down the 3 or 5. Sometimes I forget. So that's okay too, because then you can wake up the next morning with your mind stayed on what happened nice the day before. You know, and it kind of sets the tone for the day. And then what you will find is that you will start to look during the day for things to be grateful for. And that keeps your mind stayed on thee, or keeps it in a space of gratitude. And you don't have time, or you don't have room for that other stuff, the poopy stuff. Okay? So there's a quote, and I think I have that here too. I'm learning a lot about copyright laws. So, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. So think about it. You know, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. Because out of gratitude, you get the other virtues. So the practice of gratitude is a very, very important one. And there was another just in reference to what happened Friday. And I'll just mention this. It says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. This is from MLK. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So we should be grateful for love and for using love to drive out these negative happenings. And that's not in a Pollyanna type way, but that's what it's going to take. Excuse me. Too much stuff up here. Okay, so if you want to live longer, if you want to be healthy, if you want to increase prosperity, if you want to just have general well-being, because we know that prosperity is not just money. Money is just actually a very tiny part of prosperity, because we've had cases where people had lots of money and still weren't happy. You know, think about Howard Hughes. He was a billionaire, but he had to walk around with tissue to use on doorknobs so that he didn't catch something. He lived his life in isolation. You know, people didn't see him. And then there were all these wild stories. We don't know if they're true or not, about him having his hair, his beard was down to his knees, and you know, his fingernails were out there. We don't know about that, but we do know that he isolated himself. And he had plenty of money. So it's not just the money. If you have money and you're not in good health, you know, that's not prosperity. Prosperity is having radiant health. Prosperity is having abundance of all good things, of which money is only a small part. So if you want to live longer and in good health, practice gratitude, because it eliminates fear and all other error thought. And as we said before, we can't hold two thoughts, a negative and a positive, at the same time. So we choose to focus on the positive whenever possible. Now, will we slip? Yes. I do plenty. You know, sometimes, but what's important is to get back to, and I had a friend of mine tell me, she says, I always try to get back to happy. You know, so to get back to happy, that means you got to get rid of all this error thought. And we have to make good choices, which was today's daily word, about making healthy choices. So we know that it's not healthy to be stuck in a complaining mood. You know, that affects the bottom line, which is your health. It can lead to depression and some of these other things. And then finally, Philippians 4, 8 through 9. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Whenever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. That's our unity principle number 5. It's not enough. We can go around, we can know all these things and we can spite them. Some people can. They can spout them out, quoting Myrtle and Charles and unity principles. But if you don't live them, you're no good. So this is one way to live these principles. And then it says, and the God of peace will be with you. Thank you. Thank you, God, for everything. Amen. So in keeping with our theme this morning, we're going to have an experience of gratitude. So just take a moment to close your eyes and just feel grateful. Don't turn outward, casting about for things to give thanks for. Remember, it's not an emotional reaction to the blessings you can count. It is an energy you stir up within you, which is causal. Resist the temptation to indulge such thoughts as, I would be grateful if I received that promotion and raise in salary. No qualifications, no ifs or whens. Just feel grateful. Let the spirit of thanksgiving flood your whole being with this healing warmth. We do have so much to be grateful for. So just allow that to come forth for a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's just start to come back. And just remember this experience and know that we can always go back. Start to notice the good things that happen, because good is all around us in spite of the insanity that we experience at times. We know that good is always around. And even as difficult as these situations may be, there will be some good to come forth. So think on those things, not to try to deny or pretend that they don't exist, but think on the good things that may come from every experience. And so it is.